Recently, Diablo 4 decided that Season 1 was going to be summarized by take a break and go play something else for a little while until they finished it.
A future planned update.
Future planned update.
Before Season 1.
Because you love them. You just love rolling those out.
Just like sweating. We don't plan on doing a patch like this ever again. We have most definitely heard the feedback from the players on that front.
And usually I expect AAA games to be pretty terrible nowadays, but I don't usually expect games with such a massive price tag to have such toxic monetization just built right in. This Battle Pass bug or whatever that snaps your mouse or your controller to the activate Battle Pass button whenever you open the menu, so you might accidentally misclick it, is one of the most ridiculous things I've seen in a long time. It's actually pretty illegal in most places. Fortnite got sued over the whole thing, like something similar to this a little while ago, and this has happened to a lot of people, but this is probably the best clip to describe it.
No!
What?
No! Bro, if that thing activated, this right here, malicious design.
And it might not be so bad if the Battle Pass wasn't so mid. The whole thing is just so bland, and it's probably the least exciting Battle Pass they could have thought up. And this was supposed to be finished and ready to ship so far in advance, it should have been massive and insanely hype. And from what we heard in the June Campfire, it wasn't just finished, it was fully tested and ready to go.
In one of the official dev streams of Managing Expectations, when we find something, we're like, huh, it's not a hotfix worthy thing, or something we can't even hotfix because it's not just like changing a variable on a server. It's something that is a complex system that requires real work. It may come a little bit later than you're thinking because of the fact that we have to be so ahead of the game in developing this content for you. So that's why you're hearing stuff like Season 2 means Season 1 is pretty much done.
I think what's actually happening is that Blizzard is super far behind on everything in Diablo 4, so that's why Season of the Nerfed is just completely unfinished, because as of the last Campfire, they said they couldn't make all the changes that they wanted to it, and promised that something like this will never happen again, and we'll just have to wait and see, because every Campfire's basically just been the same thing. Empty promises with no action behind them. But I think it's more in line with they did put everything in they wanted for Season 1. They just weren't expecting such a massive backlash from the entire player base. They've also had lots of people defending every bad decision for a while now, and it's all starting to fall apart as their target audience starts to play more and get further into the game. Even the actual seasonal event thing to do with the malignant tunnels is shallow enough for casual players to be done probably by level 40. You pretty much experience the whole thing, and then after that it's just like maybe kill the boss on tier 4. I will say I'm happy they want to rework and fix stats though. I don't like seeing massive numbers. Multiplicative damage with crit and bone never had a place in the game, but it also should have never launched with them in their current state anyways. And with them needing to make such massive changes across the board, with core features not being able to be fixed for multiple seasons, I started to think Diablo 4 wasn't even complete for its launch date. I talked about the direction they were taking the game and how every system is there for artificial playtime inflation in my review of Diablo 4, but it's kind of hilarious to see it get even worse only after a couple weeks. I do understand that they did add the teleport to Nightmare Dungeon button, but Nightmare Dungeons suck, so that really wasn't helping any situation to get you to do more of them faster. They fumbled the bag on this one so hard that it makes me feel really good that I did grind to level 100 in the first season and beat the game in preseason, so I don't have to do it again this time around. The season feels like some sort of nostalgia fever dream that Gorilla dicked all the cool and fun things that turned my brain off at launch straight into the dumpster fire.
Oh, the irony.
Originally, I wanted to believe that they wanted what was best for the player, but then when I see every character get nerfed, even the underpowered ones and my favorite, killed any hype to draw me into this season. And of course I made another barbarian for Season 1. It obviously wasn't the best idea, but it's my favorite character. I was promised every class would have multiple viable builds, but something happened and I don't want to play the other characters at all. I've tried them all out. I really just want to play my favorite character every single season, even if the builds get stale. It'll be a me problem if I get bored, but having my character just be flat out worse in the early, mid, and late game than like all of the other characters just makes me not want to play altogether and just feels really bad. And I guess Sorks might be the exception, so I guess we're riding this multi-week journey of masochism until the buffs roll through. And I understand a lot of people are happy when they get to see them talk about this game and what they're planning with it, but they're taking way too long with everything, and they don't really have a sense of urgency towards the game that the players do, or I do. I don't really think Diablo 4 is a game that you really play for more than like 2 or 3 weeks into a season anyways, just like any other seasonal game. So with the buffs coming out like 3 or 4 weeks into the season, it's already over. Nobody wants to play it anymore. The season's done. That's the whole point of it. So everything they're saying and everything they're doing are starting to become two very different things.
If the goal of if our goal is to create an ultimately balanced experience, without regard for how much fun the player's having as part of that exchange, that's ultimately that would be like a failure on our part to not kind of think about things.
And yeah, when I hear him talk about this, season 1 was absolutely a massive failure. Who would have thought that gutting the game would go bad? In the same Campfire, they talked about, again, they said they would never do this kind of thing again. But when we look at the last balance pass, all they did was nerf things and have a negative response. These half-baked updates don't have any place in such an expensive game. It's something I'd expect from like a small studio, but not from one with this much money behind it. And every time I read increase in this disaster of a patch, it's almost always for the enemies. So it's just as negative as reducing everything else. And it's not that these people that are making the game are disconnected from what makes people happy. The picture of Diablo 4, the Cookie Monster and his crew paint in your imagination sounds great, and it would be an amazing game with those ideas actually implemented in a timely manner. But now that they failed the player base multiple times, people saw through the emergency live stream and they're not getting the wool pulled over their eyes anymore. It was obviously a really bad idea to nerf everything into the ground and not to have the rest of the balance pass in, or the Nightmare Dungeon fix in, or any information as to why such an expensive game with so much money can just full send an unfinished season. And don't get me wrong, the Nightmare Dungeon fix was amazing for the long-term health of the game. Getting overscaled by monsters was one of my main contention points when I was trying to push a level 100 dungeon, but it doesn't change the fact that the keys are still annoying to craft and they have bad inventory management. So even though the mobs feel a bit better, they still have such a long way to go with the entire system that I would have just preferred that they delayed season 1 a few weeks until it's actually done instead of sticking to some sort of schedule. Fixing the core gameplay loop in meaningful ways is a lot more important than rushing clearly unfinished things out. And Diablo 4's endgame is just trying to beat a tier 100 dungeon or beat Uber Lilith. So if you've done that in the preseason, you've already beaten the new season. And then the whole point of a season is to add new fun content for you to go do. The new tunnel boss was just a complete joke and isn't any different from the one that you fight in the story quest, other than just being like a little more difficult, but you can still kill him so quickly that it doesn't really matter. And if you know what to look for while you're gearing, you still finish the entire gearing process by level 85. There isn't any end game, and there won't be until maybe season 3 or 4 from what they said, with no details added yet. The only thing they added to speed the game up was the Nightmare Dungeon teleport, that the higher you push just exposes you to more of the core mechanics that are completely broken. Getting spam CC'd to death or just one-shotted off screen by things you can't see isn't fun. It's just stupid. It's bad gameplay overall and really hurts the game a lot more than it helps in any way, shape, or form. Long-term changes that are half-cooked should only come out when they're finished. This just makes the game take way longer because you have to play slower and safer so you don't spam die. And with the massive increase in density coming soon, it forces you more into the unstoppable immune meta than before, and is going to actually make things a lot worse before they get better until they have CC under control. It might be more fun to go kill a bunch of mobs, but if you're just locked down the entire time, it doesn't really matter. And it makes me look at how much inspiration they took from Lost Ark and implemented all of the bad mechanics without any of the good ones. Giving every single monster a CC without levels of immunity to it on your skills outside of spamming unstoppables was always going to be a problem, and you didn't really have to play any other game to figure that out. They've had feedback on all of these real core problems already for well over a month, but all these things get completely ignored until there's just an insane amount of pushback from doing something that was obviously going to be bad. So as long as people keep blindly supporting bad decisions, you're constantly going to keep getting bad updates, and a lot of games are really starting to struggle with all the feature creep and systems being built on top of each other and stacked up in weird ways when they're rushed. And it's a shame that the inventory can't be expanded because every player you see fully loads their stash and starts to lag the game out. And I'm no game dev, but something tells me that shouldn't have made it into a live server build. So if you are having fun, that's awesome. I'm not trying to stop you from that. This is just my own opinion, and this clip is my entire summary of Season 1. Why the fuck am I doing this again, dude?